When Amelia was in first grade, she always dreamed to build a roller coaster that would swoop from the top of her shed's tin roof to her grassy Kansas yard below. When Amelia grew a little older, she dreamed of flying her own plane. Amelia loved to see people fly in airplanes and dive back and forth, up and down, and all over. Amelia also dreamed that she would soar into the clouds and swoop like the eagles near her favorite creek. Amelia took flying lessons and bought her first airplane, the Canary. Amelia's flights were not always perfect. Several times she made crash landings, but she never grew discouraged. Amelia learned to read her instrument panels and soon set her first record by flying as high as 14,000 feet. In 1929, Amelia learned of the first women's air derby, a race from Santa Monica, California to Cleveland, Ohio. The derby would run for 8 days. On August 18, 1929, she set out with 19 other players. It was a difficult and long journey. In 1932, Amelia dreamed the grandest of her dreams. She would fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Only one other pilot, Charles Lindbergh, had ever made the flight alone. Amelia was determined that she too would journey across the cold Atlantic, and she did. In the quiet of night on May 20th, 1932, Amelia boarded her single-engine airplane and headed out into the darkness of the sky into a storm that lasted for hours. At times, Amelia could not see where she was going. Ice formed on her airplane's wings. Inside, Amelia felt frightened and alone. She realized that the machine she was flying was doing its best, and she must do the same. Amelia glanced through the window to see flames shooting out of the engine's exhaust, but she did not turn back. She flew on until, at last, she landed safely in a farmer's field in Northern Ireland. As Amelia tumbled from her plane, she noticed she had upset the cows and startled the farmer. In 1937, Amelia died from a very bad plane crash. I chose Amelia Earhart because she liked to fly planes, and I want to fly planes when I get old enough to fly planes. This is Amelia and her school picture in kindergarten. This is Amelia and her friend when they were little. This is Amelia raised on a farm. That's her as a grown-up. That's her as a baby. That's her as a teen. Amelia Earhart presenting a speech, and Amelia Earhart dressed up at Halloween. This is the airplane I brought to present Amelia from flying planes.
Hello, my name is Alexander Graham Bell. I was a friend of Helen Keller, and this is her story. Helen Keller was blind and deaf, yet she helped many people in her amazing life. Helen Keller was born to Scumbia, Alabama, on June 27, 1880. She was a happy, healthy baby. But when she was 2 years old, she became very sick. In time, Helen got better, but her illness left her blind and deaf. Because Helen could not hear, she also could not talk. She had no way to tell others how she felt or what she thought. She did not know that others had feelings. She often hit or kicked other children. Once, she even pushed her own baby sister, Mildred, out of her cradle. Her parents knew she needed help. She went to see me, Dr. Bell, but I was running a school for the blind and deaf. I said there was a special way deaf people could talk by making signs with their fingers. I told the Kellers how to find a teacher. When Helen was 7, a woman named Annie Sullivan came to live with the Kellers. She would change Helen's life. Annie knew what it was like not to be able to see. She was nearly blind too. She had 2 operations to save her eyesight. She started teaching Helen right away. She would give her a doll, then spell doll in her hand. Every day, Annie spelled words into Helen's hand. Helen learned fast, but she still didn't know she was making words. Annie and Helen had many fights. Annie wanted Helen to obey her, and Helen did not like this. Helen was used to doing what she wanted. Her parents felt sorry for her and never punished her. At mealtime, she ate with her fingers and stole other people's food. Annie made her use a fork and spoon and eat her own food. Annie treated her like any other human. Every day, Helen got better. One day, Annie took her out to the water pump. While water poured over one hand, Annie spilled water into the other. Helen could talk now, and people could talk to her. Helen wanted to know more about the world, but Annie could not keep up. Helen learned to read and write in Braille. Words in Braille are raised dots that blind people can feel or read. She also learned how to lip read by touching people's faces, and when she was a teen, she spoke. When Helen was 20, she did something that most people thought was impossible. She went to college. Helen spent her whole life helping the blind and deaf. Helen died on June 1st, 1968, but people still remember her courageous life. I picked this character because she went from a blind and deaf child to a courageous woman who went to college. This is Helen using her hand to read in Braille. Helen is smelling the roses to figure out what they are. This is Helen Keller Memorial. Helen graduating from college. Helen's lip reading here. Annie Sullivan's teaching her how to spell doll. I think this is one of Helen's speeches. It says walking with a friend in the dark is walking alone in the dark. Annie Sullivan taking her out to the water pump. And these are some Braille books that I got from the library. And up here is the American Sign Language. These are more Braille books over here. Black Book of Color. This one's pretty cool. It has the Braille alphabet. You can kind of feel it. And this is just some copies of the American Sign Language.